True.
You watched 4 hours of content yesterday. That's binge watching.
I know, but usually, not when I'm doing interviews, but if I was just watching them as a fan,
Yeah.
I like to do like one every few days. Some people just do like a whole
Yeah,
series.
but
in a
see,
weekend.
so you said you've watched 4 of them, right? And you
Yeah.
said that that's not binge watching, but it's borderline binge watching.
is.
I mean, it's almost a third of the day.
Yeah,
What did you think of it?
I loved it.
Oh, right
I
on.
really loved it.
I'll put you right on the spot.
Yeah, no, but yeah, I hated it.
Yeah, but I think this season, I'm glad that you watched 4, because I think people should watch at least 3, like in a day, because the first 2 are really in any show, like in like Game of Thrones and Stranger Things or whatever, where you can binge watch it. Normally, like the first show, because this is Narcos Mexico season 1. They establish the world, and then I think the third one really kicks off, and then you'll be off to the races.
For those who aren't aware so much about this story, I'm just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about who you play and how he fits into this world, and also where Narcos Mexico fits in on the kind of Narcos timeline.
Yeah, exactly. So if you've seen Narcos, this season, the Mexico season, it's like a new beginning. We go back in time and we tell you what was happening parallel to the story you heard, what was happening in Mexico, and how Mexico and the world of these guys benefit from the issues Colombia was having, to transport the cocaine to the States. The story of these characters is quite important to understand the mess we're living in today. This is the beginning of everything. This is the beginning of this horrible war that we're going through these days in Mexico. My character is called Felix Gallardo, and this is a very important man because he managed to put everyone to sit everyone on the table, and create a structure that lasted for decades in Mexico, and that made them, the most powerful drug dealers in the planet.
Yeah, because I was just wondering. Were you a big fan of the other Narcos series? And if so, when you got that call to be in this, was it one of the easiest kind of yeses you've ever had to give?
No, to be honest with you, no, because I watched like a bunch of my son, he was like 6 at the time. This was about 3 or 4 years ago, and we watched. I basically read and saw documentaries for the most part, and so we were watching a bunch of kids movies like every Sunday, and then monitoring what he sees. So Narcos was not one of those deals. He's 10 years old now. I don't think he's going to watch Narcos for another year at least. So when I met Eric Newman, who's the showrunner, he had interest in me playing Kiki Camarena. I then started watching Narcos, and I was the same thing as you. Like at first I watched 2, and I was like, this is pretty cool. And then I think I watched the other 18 in a week and a half. And I said the same thing. It's not binge watching.
Yeah, it's not.
No, it's relaxing.
Exactly. So you think we're still feeling the effects today of what this?
Definitely, yeah. Because also the thing is, this is not a black and white story. It's not about the good guys chasing the bad guys. This story tells you how this organization couldn't work with the help of everyone in power, the politicians, the cops, the military, in both sides of the border, So they created this organization that worked perfectly, and then El PRI, this party that was in power in Mexico for many years, went down. Basically after 70 years of running the country, we voted them out, and that election, I think, changed everything. The new president decided to fight and to go on war with the drug traffickers, and he created the mess we're living in. But this case, the Kiki Camarena case, is very important also. It defines a lot of the relation between Mexico and the States, basically, and And this season focuses on that, on the Kiki Camarena case.
And I mean, though the series, I mean, it's sort of unashamedly sort of cinematic. It's got a kind of Scorsese feel to it, the voiceover, the editing and stuff like that. At the same time, I mean, we're dealing with real people and real lives lost. Is there, I guess, even despite how accessible this is, in many ways, I mean, there has to be a level of responsibility, I guess, for everyone involved to respect the fact that this is a true story about real people.
Yeah, and what's funny, I guess it's because, Goodfellas did take from a lot of real life situations and people, that were in the witness protection program. This is kind of, I guess, in subject matter, the same. And it's interesting that you bring that up because, like in the 70s and 80s, like 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, I mean, it was all about the mob, and that's what everybody was talking about. And, you saw John Gotti getting arrested and those guys, all these mafioso guys turning on each other. And this is what's on the news now. So there is that sense of it because, any criminal enterprise, what you have is like a massive amount of secrecy. Because that's the only way for them to actually sustain a business is through secrecy. And these guys definitely knew the value of that. And so there's a lot of secrets that are unfolded in Narcos.
Because, I mean, you obviously mentioned how sort of it feels so relevant at the moment, particularly, obviously, this is also studies the kind of relationship between America and Mexico as well. Now, obviously, it's relevant because of Donald Trump at the moment and obviously this absurd idea of a wall. But when you watch this, you realise that this is a system, isn't it? So what's a wall going to do anyway?
The wall won't stop anything. This is a system, and, nothing's going to stop unless there's no market. And if we keep seeing this issue as a security issue, we're never going to fix it, It's a health issue, and it has to be treated like that, What Canada is doing, what a few states in the United States are doing, what Uruguay did, that's a good step in order to a good step forward in order to fix this issue, and but definitely this has to be treated as a health issue. So the thing is, what's clear in this series is that this there's no way this could have worked if everyone wasn't involved, and once you put all of that, it's like the bad guys here are also working for someone. And that's what I like about this series. That the criminals, there's many criminals out there wearing suits, making decisions, and in very, in a very high position, either in the government or in the business sector, So yeah, the series lives in the gray areas, It's not black and white.
And I've just interviewed Diego as well. Obviously, you've worked closely with him before on Cesar Chavez as well, which I'm still annoyed never got a UK release because I loved it when I saw it in Berlin.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, he's a talented dude, isn't he?
Yeah, it was great to work with him as a director. Like, here is a little bit different because he's not telling me what to do. Yeah. But it was great working with him. I'm surprised that it didn't get a UK release.
I know. I loved it.
Yeah, I think people would have liked it. Hopefully they would have liked it.
Because, you do move sort of seamlessly between kind of comedy and drama. And I was wondering, is it quite... I think there's an actual real misconception in the industry that comedy's easy. I think that's... But in some ways, is it actually quite... Does it alleviate some pressure when you do something more dramatic? Because in some way, there's no responsibility to make anyone laugh in some ways. Can it actually sometimes be more freeing to do drama than comedy?
No, I think, it depends on what you do. Like, if you do... to me, comedy's just as hard, to be honest with you. Because it's... there's a lot of pressure to make people laugh. And when it's not funny, you can tell, like, in your bones, you're like, this isn't going to get a laugh. And then once you're in the zone, so to speak, then it could be, it feels like you can do no wrong, but that's few and far between. You know what I mean? That's maybe one scene in a movie or maybe one scene in 2 movies or something. And in order for you to do it well, it's tough. The only person who I think has been doing it for a long time, I think, is Will Ferrell. That and the Monty Python. I think those guys were just hitting it like... I was just rewatching some of the Mighty Python, and those guys are just phenomenal. But even then, that's like one group out of I don't know how many. And with sustainability, it's really, really tough. And the same thing with drama. If you're just doing the lines without specific behavior and character work, and like you're not applying any of the research, then it's going to seem very easy because it's very superficial. Not superficial in a bad way, but like you're just saying the lines the way that you think they should be said, as opposed to really living in the moment. And I don't think you put people through the experience of the drama.
And you're playing one of those sort of characters. I mean, I was going to call him, you say it a lot better than I do. I say Gallardo, but obviously it's better
Miguel
than...
Ángel Félix Gallardo.
That's the one. Yeah, because I was wondering, he's... but when you play a character like that, someone who is so flawed, to say the least, do you have to like them in order to portray them? Do you have to find a semblance of empathy towards the characters that you play to understand who they are?
No, I don't have to like him, no. But I have to stop judging him, and I have to find his motivations, and try to understand that. Otherwise you just portray a two-dimensional character, and that's very dangerous, You can't be the bad guy. You're a guy that makes wrong choices, but otherwise there's no way to portray him and to bring truth to your performance. So yes, I had to understand. I think, but this again, the angle where the series is told from is interesting because this is a series where the bad guys are trying to do a good thing. The good guys are doing the bad thing. It's like everyone is. It's a show about characters full of contradictions. And that makes it very interesting for an actor.
And just going back to Narcos Mexico, this is all very recent history. I was wondering if you met with any people that, because obviously your character, he was, his friends and family are still around. I was wondering if you did the research and actually met those people to speak to them about, him and what he was like.
Oh, okay. I thought you were asking me if I met any of the narcos. I'm like, no.
Oh,
man.
no.
I didn't visit anybody in jail, buddy. No, I did meet with Mika. Because everything, his wife, because everything that I read was just a story about him, and they interviewed people that knew him, but they never interviewed the man himself. So I talked to Mika for quite a while, and because as an actor, you want to know what makes a guy tick, what makes a person tick, and are they fast? Are they, what makes that person up? How are they? And she said it was very simple. He was a driven man, and to try to make a difference. And he saw something that was happening that was bad, that he felt, that he knew was bad. And he just had an instinct about things, which I think when you have an instinct about things, and, especially like if you see an empire being built and you can envision the mayhem that's going to ensue, it gives you a different kind of instinct and a different kind of drive than it would most people, because it would constantly gnaw at you. And that's something that she said was true of Kiki, that that it gnawed at him and that it definitely hit him, and so he had to do something.
Yeah, because even though Narcos is inherently very sort of cinematic, it's almost Scorsese-like with the voiceovers and the editing and everything like that. But is there a responsibility and an element of respect amongst everyone making this? Because this is real people, there were real lives lost here. So though making it very accessible, at the same time, it has to maintain authenticity, doesn't it?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I don't want this series to be watched by young audiences and go like, wow, what a life, I want to be one of those, because then we fail. I think it's, they're characters that you end up understanding, but they're scary, they're sad characters, because from the beginning, by the choices they make, their ending is going to be terrible, tragical, and you wonder what's wrong with our countries, what's wrong with a country like Mexico that forces people to live these lives, and the world, this contrast of those who have everything and those who have nothing, and how did we allow this to happen? Because that's what makes these characters real, that's what I think at the end what we're saying is that it's not fair that we live in a world where so many have so little chance to choose, you know, that they end up living this reality.
And have you spoken to her since? I mean, has she seen any of this? I mean,
No.
Are you quite nervous about hearing her reaction?
Sure, it's always nerve-wracking because I'm playing her husband, and what he did, and it's there's some tough scenes in there, so we'll see. One
of the things I love about Narcos as a kind of franchise, I suppose, is the authenticity. I mean, firstly, it's so for such a mainstream series, the characters speak Spanish, which seems like a small thing, but it's so important, I think, to add. But obviously, we hear you speaking Spanish in this as well. Was it quite fun to speak Spanish in a big mainstream production? Did you ever speak Spanish at home at all with your family?
Well, Spanish was my first language, and my parents had moved from Mexico to the United States, and I didn't know how to speak English until I think I was about 5, and then I started watching a lot of television, and then at school, so from 9 to 5 I was speaking English, and then when I'd get home it was Spanish, so I didn't get past much further than 5-year-old Spanish. So when I speak Spanish, it's kind of like a 5-year-old. Like I understand it fully, unless I go to a different country, like in Spain, where they have some different words. I understand it totally, but like the way I think and the way I talk is a little bit differently. But it's always fun to speak Spanish and challenge yourself on camera.
So yeah, because even though this is showing obviously a sort of a shady side in some regards, I suppose, to Mexico, at the same time, how vital is it that we indulge in stories from different cultures around the world? I feel like part of the thing, obviously going back to Trump at the moment, is people have become so insular and care so much about borders and becoming very ignorant to other cultures. But here we have a really accessible, huge mainstream series in the Spanish language, set in Mexico. I mean, that must be so important to tell stories from around the world.
Definitely. I when I sat down with the producer, I said, I'm really happy to do Narcos, because I'm really happy to be part of Narcos because Narcos reaches a huge audience, It travels around the world. And I really hope next time someone in the UK is in front of a line of cocaine, that they think a little bit what had to happen for that line to get there, the pain of how many people is behind that line you're having, We have to make sure we tell our stories. We have to make sure we remind people that every decision they make has an impact in the life of others, and with cocaine it's clear.
Even though this is showing a relatively sort of shady side, I suppose, in some ways to Mexico, but because of the industry we're delving into, how vital is it that we are still exploring and looking into stories at the moment from other cultures? Because one of the big problems at the moment, I think, with Trump and the vast majority of the world and this kind of rise of the kind of right-wing sort of fascism and stuff is that people are getting so insular and very protective of borders. And I think how important is it that through Netflix or through big kind of companies, we're delving into stories from other cultures? I mean, I don't know if you've seen Roma yet, which is incredible, but it's how important is it that we are delving into other nations and other stories from around the world?
Well, I think hats off to Netflix, obviously, right? Like, they made, the fact of the matter is that the content can be whatever it is, because if it's going to be drama, there's always a problem. There's always bad guys to get. That's the basic definition of a drama. It's an intention, and there's an obstacle, and you have to get over it. And what better to get over than or to accomplish through it than bad guys. So that's just the basic definition of it. The fact that there's a show that's half in Spanish is a phenomenal feat in my book, and the fact that it's had the success it has had, it just makes me proud to be part of it. Like, just mechanically speaking, the content can be what it is. I think it's about 70% true. But that we got to remind ourselves that the majority and the vast majority of people on the planet are actually good people. There might be that 15% that are often, that make the news, and we have to remind ourselves and also look at the actual truth is that when you look at news, they're not saying good, it's not good news. It's just news, and it's bad news mainly. It's like somebody who's cheating something, or all the atrocities that are going on in the world. And so sometimes that's the cookie crumbles in the same direction when it comes to drama.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's you know, I think I've heard someone before when I think the trailer came out say this could glorify kind of the drug industry. So, but actually, I think, you know, like you said, you know, cocaine's like a party drug in the UK. But people need to watch this and realise how it got to their plate, don't they?
Definitely, it's because we have to live with responsibility. You know, we have to, as consumers of anything, we have to be responsible. When we buy something, we allow something to happen. So when you buy cocaine, you're allowing these stories to happen, you know, and I don't think this series glorifies anything. I think this series is quite honest, you know, in fact, about what's going on and what people are willing to do in order to get that cocaine to you. So and what people are willing to risk, you know. I live in a country where in the last 12 years, there's been more than 250,000 people killed for this war. You know, so it's not. I mean, we've reached a point that is a disaster, is a crisis, you know, and I want to make sure this story gets to be told, because everyone can be part of the solution.
And just very quickly before I go, then, what is it like being an American Mexican in a Trump America at the moment?
To me, it's no different, you know, but it's something that, it oddly enough, it's bringing people together in a way, and the way that it's affected me now, it's like I just have to talk about it more, when normally, you know, nobody really dives into politics. You know, we're, you know, obviously doing publicity for a show, and I get asked for Trump, and I was like, I've never met the guy, so I don't know, but hopefully he watches it.
Just to end on a slightly sort of more positive note, because obviously the real world's not so great, but you stepped out of it to star in the Star Wars franchise. Just quickly, I mean, now that's in the past, and when you look back, I mean, that franchise has got an unparalleled level of fandom. Now you've got a couple of years since. I mean, what was that experience like to be a part of a Star Wars film? I mean, that must have been kind of crazy.
It was amazing. It was amazing because I'm a fan. I grew up watching Star Wars, and being part of that world was unique. And having the chance to share that with my kids was so special. You know, had them on set. They came with me to the Star Wars convention in England, and. I don't know. I had to remind myself I was there to work as an actor, because I found myself living the experience as if I was just a fan that had a lot of luck and had the chance to be in the middle of everything. You know, it was really cool.
So you didn't invite your kids to the set of Narcos Mexico?
No, Narcos. They're gonna have to wait 10 years to watch Narcos, gladly.
But thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey, you guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yeah.
Nice.
Hey!